Like,
Notice how the biology and the narrative are in sync there, because when you look at sort of the diagrams and graphs of the sexologists, who study sexual arousal and sexual response, you see the curve for males just going straight up and then climax and then down. But women's sexual arousal is in plateaus. So you rise a little, you plateau, you dip a little, then rise a little, plateau. You're at a higher plateau now. And it keeps going up and up, but in these plateaus where men are straight up. Well, women's sexual arousal plateaus almost parallel the scenes of a great movie or the acts of a great play or the chapters of a novel, so
right,
they're in sync in that way. So I really like that you do that. There's scene one, you brush by.
right.
Scene two, a little more involvement. Scene three, you're talking to some other women. She sees it. Scene four. So this natural story develops. And there's something deeply psychological and sexual that goes on as well. I got to address, you use the word mystery. We're talking really about um, giving little clues to who you are, but leaving so much unsaid at this early phase where the woman's curiosity about you lights on fire. And what this allows is a psychological process called projection to occur. And what projection is that our minds are designed to keep us alive through filling in gaps in stories. For example, if you're walking down the sidewalk, how do you really, really know that with each step, there's going to be ground under your feet? If you had to stop and think, well, before I take this next step, I got to make sure that there is earth there to walk on. Well, we'd never get anything done in our lives, right? So our brains naturally take partial information and make guesses based on probabilities
And previous
and
experience.
previous experience that, yes, there'll probably be ground under my feet with that next step. So I don't need to worry about it. I make up the rest of the story that sidewalks last, they're durable, they don't just disappear.
Right.
Well, what you're doing with this by only giving partial information, so you brush by, you don't actually exchange words. She sees how you look, she sees the gaze in your eyes at her, and that's a little bit of information about you. She can derive that you're interested.
Body language.
Body language is involved. But what's going on is her brain is making up a story around this partial information you're giving her. And what she's then doing is projecting onto you information about herself and her own desires. Because what do we have to fill in gaps in a story except our own life's experience and our own wishes and desires?
And that's why I advise guys when they talk about the first date at a lounge for a cocktail or the first meeting to really allow the woman to talk and guide the conversations through questioning. But one of the major errors men make in the initial meeting is that they overexpose themselves. It's like anything
Yes.
overexposed is not good. Overexposed film is ruined. If I eat, one steak is good, 10 is too many. Like too much of something kills the intrigue.
Yes.
And same with dating. Like a guy is best kept, and I've seen this over hundreds of women in my personal life. A few little intriguing data points and let her project her fantasy onto me. Because frankly, I'm not going to live up to her dream. Like she's projecting Prince Charming or the Dark Knight or some kind of fantasy onto me. And the more concrete facts I give her about my life that, or any guy does, that don't quite comport with that, it's going to be jarring and it's going to
Yes.
reduce her sexual attraction. So remain mysterious, but also increasingly available such that she can continue to project that. She'll get worked up on her own. And a funny thing too about women is the more that they share, the more they talk about themselves, the closer they feel to me, even though I'm saying nothing and I'm revealing, they feel more intimate the more they share, which
Yes.
is interesting. So I really don't have to do too much. Just make a few jokes, be near them, encourage the ask, sort of increasingly steer the conversation towards relationships, dating, even ex-boyfriends, why they broke, get them in that mental space talking about that, but really not correcting their fantasy by saying, actually, no, I'm not a prince from Saudi. I live with my folks in the suburbs at home. It kind of kills their fantasy.
Right.
So the more a guy does that and brings reality, cold, hard reality into the early phases, the more he's going to kill the vibe.
We're in the animal brain at this point too, and it doesn't work by logic. It works by instinct. And so part of this jarring effect that occurs when the truth does not match the fantasied story, what it does to the animal area of the brain is it says something is wrong with the mating dance. Something is wrong here. And you don't know why, and there's not logic to why. It's just a feeling that something is wrong. So that's why it's important not to jar her out of that. One other thing we got to mention about the psychology of this, and then we got to get to the physical aspect, is the difference in fantasy lives between men and women. If we're talking about projection as a way of, this is not manipulation, by the way. It almost sounds like what Paul just said is manipulative, but it's not. Projection is something to be savored and enjoyed, and it's really this notion that they call falling in love, like having that the magic of love at first sight. Limerence is the technical word. So it's a good thing, and you're not being manipulative by savoring this and enjoying it and providing it. But the fantasy life is what's at play here. Now, there was a study done in 2001 of the differences in sexual fantasies between men and women. And almost across the board, over 90%, men's sexual fantasies will be something visual, and it will involve actual sex acts or positions and be very visual in nature. This also explains why 90% of users of pornography are male.
Right.
Women's sexual fantasies, by contrast, are over 90% about sensations, about how will I feel,
right,
and not visual. They're more
auditory,
narrative, storytelling, and feelings. Now, a story can give you feelings, and then there's also actual sensations, physical bodily sensations. Those are women's fantasies. So if you're in this mindset of, oh man, I'd really like to, and that's where your head is, and that's what you're projecting out, and that's what she's picking up on,
no good.
That's going to be jarring as compared to you just enjoying a conversation with her about what it's like on the beach this time of year and how nice it would be to have a picnic lunch.
Rich descriptive language.
Yes.
Also gets women's gears going. There, I've been told, actually, my last serious girlfriend, she was dating a bunch of guys, and I gave her a phone call, and just based on the sound of my voice on the phone, it was kind of gruff and a little bit distant. She said she got turned on. The voice, women respond very well to like slow, deep voice, sort of somewhat instructive or fatherly too. Like, even demanding, like, why don't you come by, or giving suggestion. So auditory is good. And then you talk about sensation, like touching, lower back, the inner arms, the neck. If I'm, for example, sitting next to a girl, that's why I'm really not an advocate of dinners on the first date, because that face-to-face interview style across the table is so confrontational and doesn't allow the woman to get into that comfort zone. It's much better, I found, instead of dinner where it's all this cold hard talk and you're at a remove, to sit side by side and kind of nuzzle and use the excuse of closeness to lean in and sort of, instead of speaking directly to her, lean into her ear and kind of whisper stuff. It can be very simple conversation, but just the closeness of the breath on the ear, the breath on the back of the neck, playing with the hair a little, the rubbing the back of the neck, all these things incrementally excite a woman.
And notice that if you're in the purely masculine mindset of, I want to get to the act, and you have this visual image, that's not going to gel well with how you interact with her, which needs to be more a stepwise storytelling, living a story together. The way that plays out in touch has got to be the way the woman is thinking. While you're thinking of a goal, like a position, she's instead thinking, where are we in the story?
Process.
What plot point are we up to? in the story, is what she's thinking. You're thinking, must get to goal, must get to goal. And she's thinking, gee, I'm enjoying this story. Where are we in the story? And your way of touching her needs to parallel a story, not reaching a goal.